137 meters in length, 23 meters in width, 3 complete floors. These were the dimensions that God gave to Noah, direct, clear, and supernaturally specific. The divine order left no room for doubt. Make for you an ark. And before that voice began one of the greatest works ever done by human hands. The Bible reveals the size of the ark, the material, and the purpose. But to transform this order into wood, beams, and structure, Noah had to face gigantic challenges. Challenges that the text does not detail, but that any builder of the time would understand. And it all starts with what many ignore: the terrain. A structure 137 meters in length cannot be erected anywhere. It requires a large, firm, stable space, far from dangerous slopes and near cypress forests, which would serve as raw material. So imagine Noah walking through the terrain, analyzing the soil, observing the firmness of the earth, the proximity of the trees, the accessibility. Without machines, without engineers, without maps. Only discernment, practical wisdom, and faith. And when he found the ideal place, he started the first stage. And it had nothing glorious. Remove large stones, pull out deep roots, level each meter, compact the soil to support tons of wood, all with simple tools, but with a determination moved by the word. But there was something that made the work even more challenging in the pre-Diluvian world: the constant humidity that rose from the earth. The Bible explains that a mist rose from the earth and watered the entire surface of the soil. Genesis 2:6. This means that the soil was frequently moist by nature. And moist soil can turn into mud. Tools sink. Wood absorbs moisture. The terrain becomes vulnerable, so Noah probably had to dig small channels around the quarry, creating simple deviations so that the soil's natural water would not flood the work area. It was not rain falling from the sky. It was the earth itself releasing moisture. While he was doing this, people were observing. Some laughed. Others whispered. What sense does it make to prepare such a gigantic land? But Noah did not answer. Because he did not build looking at human logic. He built looking at divine instruction. And when the ground was finally firm, flat, and dry enough, a new challenge arose before him. The collection of wood for a colossal structure. The Bible says, "Make the ark of cypress wood." And cypresses were not small trunks. They were huge, resistant, heavy trees, ideal for a work of that magnitude. To knock down such a tree with rudimentary tools? Only with strength, patience, and persistence. To knock down hundreds, it was a process that required daily discipline. Strike after strike, trunk after trunk, Noah and his sons worked until the trunk of the tree echoed through the forest. But the service did not end there. Moving a giant trunk to the quarry required technique. Without wheels, without enough animals, without machines, the solution was the same used by ancient peoples. Wooden rollers. Smaller trunks were placed under the larger trunk. With ropes and levers, they pulled slowly, moving tons of wood a few meters at a time. When the trunk moved forward, the rollers behind were placed in front. Slow, tiring, risky, but each trunk transported was one step closer to the construction of what God ordered. And Noah went on. Because whoever received an instruction from God does not work by what he sees. He works by what he believes. And while all this was happening, the inhabitants around saw that unusual movement men carrying huge trunks towards a gigantic land. It was natural for many to doubt, for others to doubt. But none of this stopped Noah, because he did not work motivated by human eyes, but by the instruction that came from God. As the wood accumulated in the ground, it was time to start the most complex part of the whole work. Not only cut and transport, but erect a colossal structure that would need to remain firm during the greatest storm in the history of mankind. For the bow to remain firm, straight, and resistant, Noah would need to start at the base, at the backbone of the entire boat, the keel. The Bible does not describe the process, but any ancient builder would understand that a work of this size required an extremely long and robust central beam, capable of supporting all the weight of the hull, the three floors, and the tons of load that would come later. But there was an impossible detail to ignore. No tree, no matter how big it was, would reach 137 meters in length. This meant that Noah needed to join several giant beams, trunk after trunk, creating a continuous, straight, and solid line. A task that required technique, precision, and patience. These beams were cut and adjusted with wooden fittings, something known since ancient civilizations, male and female systems, which, when well done, became as firm as entire structures. And to lock these fittings, hardwood stakes and pegs were inserted, creating strong enough joining points to hold everything in violent storms. When the keel was ready, an impressive moment arose in front of Noah. The need to raise the ark's ribs. The ribs were arched beams that rose from the sides and shaped the hull. The ribs needed to be fitted precisely. Therefore, Noah and his sons did what ancient builders mastered very well. They created fittings to size, carefully carved, which allowed the beams to tilt and arch naturally when fixed to the keel. And as these ribs rose next to the keel, the shape of the ark finally began to emerge before the eyes. Now imagine the scene. Huge, heavy beams being raised by levers, thick ropes, and pure human strength. Noah and his sons pulling, adjusting, correcting angles, observing every inch. Because if a rib was too inclined, the whole structure would lose balance. So they probably used ropes stretched from end to end as guidelines. They used stones like plumes to ensure verticality. And they repeated the process dozens of times. When the ark's skeleton began to take shape, the sight must have been impressive. A gigantic wooden structure emerging where the sea never existed, the size of a modern building, but made only with simple tools and human hands. And then came the decisive moment, sealing the ark. Because a beautiful structure is not enough. It needed to be waterproof, and God was direct about it. Betamoraz the ark inside and outside. This detail is profound. The bitumen, a resin derived from the earth, needed to be boiled, thickened, and applied while still hot, creating a hard and resistant film. But applying only on the outside would not be enough. Wood, over time, absorbs moisture, and any infiltration could destroy everything. So Noah and his children spent days, maybe weeks, covering each crack, each joint, each slit, both inside and outside. Each layer needed to dry before receiving another. And any failure could compromise the whole project. In the end, when the last part was sealed and hardened, the ark was no longer just a wooden structure. It was a hermetic shelter, designed to face something that had never happened before in the history of mankind. And the next step would be as important as the external structure. Organize the interior to house living creatures. The Bible reveals a fundamental detail. You will make compartments in the ark. The Hebrew term used, kinnim, literally means nests, cells, small divisions. In other words, the ark was not an open shed. It was made up of smaller sections, carefully planned to maintain order, safety, and stability during the flood. And here is an important theological point. The Bible does not describe the layout. It only states that there were 3 floors and compartments. Based on this, we imagine what would be logical, practical, and possible for Noah. To maintain the balance of the ark, the most sensible thing would be to organize the animals by weight and size. Lower floor, heavy animals, elephants, hippos, large cattle. This would keep the center of gravity low, avoiding dangerous oscillations. Intermediate floor, medium-sized animals, lions, bears, deer, larger domestic animals. Upper floor, birds and smaller animals, lighter, less impact on balance, and closer to ventilation. This division does not contradict the Bible and is totally consistent with such a large structure. The compartments were essential. Without them, predators could attack prey. Animals could get hurt. There would be total chaos inside. Diseases would spread quickly. So Noah probably built simple internal walls, but strong enough to keep each species in its space. These walls needed to be well fitted, without compromising the integrity of the hull, remembering that each piece of wood added weight and needed to be planned. Ventilation. The Bible mentions, "You will make an opening of a vault above." This indicates a kind of long window, continuous below the roof. But to ventilate 3 whole floors, probably Noah did. Small side openings protected. External openings that prevented water from entering. Internal corridors for air circulation. All within the logic of the pre-diluvian environment. Without adequate ventilation, the gases produced by the animals would be deadly. Food storage. 1 year of food for all creatures meant a huge amount of supplements. The Bible says, "You will bring food to you and to them." This included hay, grains, dry fruits, roots, water stored in jars, and containers. Therefore, entire areas of the interior of the ark needed to be dedicated solely to food, stored in an organized way and protected from moisture. The ark was more than a ship. It was a floating city with complete logistics. Discard of waste. Plausible possibilities. Slightly inclined floors. Simple drainage channels. Small side openings. Just to drain liquids. And when each space, each division, each corridor was ready, Noah realized that the work was reaching the most critical point of all. The door. A gigantic opening, big enough to allow the entry of animals from all sides. And at the same time, strong enough not to compromise the entire structure. The door would be the most vulnerable point of the ark, and also the most symbolic point, because the Bible says something extraordinary. The Lord closed the door, the man built, but God sealed. Among all the elements of the ark, no one drew more attention than the door. The Bible clearly mentions and put a door at the side. Genesis 6.16, to prevent the huge opening from compromising the structure, Noah probably installed thick beams around the frame. Diagonal locks, strong and deep fittings, high-strength wood on the edges, all to ensure that the door would not become a point of collapse. And remember, Noah did not have enough metal to create huge hinges like the modern ones, so the most plausible system would be a vertical pivot. A large shaft of reinforced wood on the side of the door, allowing it to rotate with force, but with stable operation. Here is a precious theological point. The Bible says, "And the Lord closed the door." Genesis 7.16, that is, Noah built. God sealed. Before the animals arrived, Noah certainly walked through the interior of the ark, testing beams, checking if the concrete hardened completely, checking cracks, reinforcing ribs, evaluating the weight of the provisions already loaded, hearing the sounds of the compressed wood. In large wooden structures, it speaks. Ranges, stalls, settles. And Noah, with experience acquired over the years of construction, would know how to identify if something was wrong. And then something supernatural happened. The Bible is explicit. The animals came to Noah. They were not captured. They were not driven by force. They did not arrive randomly. They came. It seemed like an orchestrated movement, as if an invisible hand was guiding each species. Imagine the scene. Pairs of animals arising between trees. Birds landing near the entrance. Wild creatures walking quietly next to prey. Reptiles crawling in the exact direction. Cubs following instincts they did not learn, and each one positioning himself in order. No chaos, no confusion, no attacks. It was the sign that it was not just a human project. It was a divine act happening before the eyes of Noah's family. When everyone entered, animals, birds, reptiles, Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and his daughters-in-law also entered. 8 people. And then the work was done. The faith had been obeyed. And now began the most challenging part. How did Noah and his family survive inside the ark during the days of the flood? With the door closed by God's own hand, a different silence took over the ark. On the outside, the world followed as if nothing had happened. On the inside, everything was ready. Accommodated animals, organized compartments, stored food, the structure sealed and firm. It was the beginning of something that had never happened in the history of mankind. The Bible describes this moment with solemn words. In the year 600 of Noah's life, all the fountains of the great abyss were broken and the gates of heaven were opened. Genesis 7.11. This indicates underground waters exploding to the surface. Internal pressures released, gigantic volumes of water pouring with force. Earthquakes and deep ruptures under the earth. Noah's family felt the ark shaking, not by the water above, but by the violent movement of the earth below. Then something even more extraordinary happened. The gates of heaven were opened. It was the first rain in history. And not an ordinary rain. Thick drops, growing volume, deafening noise over the wood, thunder echoing. Lightning striking the sky. The ark, until then motionless, began to feel the touch of the first waters, accumulating around it. Imagine the neighbors who laughed at Noah. Those who called the ark crazy. The Bible does not describe his feelings, but it is easy to imagine. Screams by the unknown rain. Shock by the waters rising rapidly. People running without understanding, panic over what had never happened. The faith that once seemed crazy now became the only refuge. The water was rising, rising, until the heavy and firm hull began to float. For Noah and his family, this must have been an indescribable feeling. The wood shaking, the ground vibrating, the initial swing, the sound of the water hitting the side. The ark detaching from the ground for the first time. That boat, built for decades, finally fulfilled its purpose. The ark was not guided by sails, oars, or lemmings. It did not need that. It was in the hands of God. The Bible describes it. The waters prevailed and grew greatly upon the earth. Genesis 7.19. This means mountains disappearing, cities submerged, trees torn. Down, ancient life being erased before the eyes of Noah's family. On the inside, the ark looked like its own world. Outside, everything died. Inside, God preserved life. The contrast was absolute. How long did the rain last? The sound of the rain ceased after 40 days, but the flood was far from over. The Bible describes it. The waters prevailed and grew greatly upon the earth for 150 days. Genesis 7.24. Even without rain, the waters continued to rise and move, covering mountains, plains, valleys, and everything that existed before. Inside the ark, time seemed immobile. There was work every day. Feed the animals, clean the compartments, check the beams, reinforce the fittings, monitor the stability, pray, wait. And then, after long months of waiting, the biblical narrative reveals a decisive moment. And God remembered Noah. Genesis 8.1, the Bible says that God sent a wind upon the earth, and the waters began to fall. Slowly, day after day, the level began to decrease until the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat. Genesis 8.4, after months of partial darkness, Noah opened the upper window. For the first time since the beginning of the flood, fresh air entered with force. Natural light filled the interior of the ark, but he still had no way of knowing if the earth was ready. Then he made a logical and wise decision. He released a crow. Then he released a dove. The dove returned, for it found no nest. The world was still in waters. A week later, Noah tried again. The dove returned, but this time it carried an olive leaf. It was the first sign of a new beginning. Another week passed. Noah released the dove for the third time, and it did not return. The earth finally began to become habitable again. After more than a year inside the ark, God spoke again. Get out of the ark, you and your wife and your children and the women of your children with you. Genesis 8.16, and Noah obeyed. The door, the same one that God had closed, was now open. An intense light invaded the interior. The animals began to come out, species by species, following their instincts. Scattering through the new earth, the whole family set foot on the firm ground for the first time in many months. The smell of wet earth, the pure air, the deep silence. Everything was new. Nothing from the old world had survived, but the grace of God preserved enough life for a new beginning. As soon as he left the ark, Noah did something symbolic, powerful, memorable. He raised an altar to the Lord. There, between rocks, dry mud, and the beginning of a restored landscape, Noah offered a sacrifice. The Bible describes that God was pleased with the smooth smell and made a promise, I will never again destroy all life with water. And then he placed a visible sign in the sky, the rainbow, an eternal covenant reminding humanity that even in judgment, God preserves. The remaining sustains life and opens a path of faith. With the flood closed, the ark had fulfilled its purpose. Now began a new chapter. Noah and his family would repopulate the earth. The nations would arise from the children of Noah. The world would gain new cycles, seasons, and limits established by God. The story of redemption would go on. From that boat would be born all post-diluvian humanity. And the ark, a symbol of obedience, faith, and salvation, remained as a testimony that God always rescues those who trust in His voice. If you have come this far, you have already realized that the ark was not just a boat. It was an act of faith placed in wood. It was salvation preserved on 3 floors. It was the divine answer to sin, and at the same time the proof of God's love for life. But the story of Noah does not end in the ark. There is much more about the beginning of humanity, the new covenant, the generations that came after, and how all this connects to God's greater plan. Click now on the video next to it to find out what happened after the flood and how it shaped the whole biblical story.